Nothing rattles an avoidant more than watching you finally choose yourself. You need to hear this clearly, because for a long time you've been quietly breaking your own heart by staying kind to someone who only snaps into attention when their ego takes a hit. The second you stop putting them on a pedestal and start honoring your own needs instead, you don't actually lose them, you shake the ground they've been standing on. And that's exactly the moment an avoidant starts feeling something toward you they never saw coming. You're not out to hurt them or punish them. What you're really doing is interrupting a story they built to keep themselves safe, a story that says they can offer the bare minimum and still be adored, that they can stay emotionally checked out and you'll keep chasing anyway, that they can show up warm one day and ice cold the next, while you twist yourself into whatever shape it takes to stay close. For a long time, you played your part in that story without even realizing it. You answered them within minutes, even on the days they left you waiting for hours. You put their emotional baggage first while your own heart quietly bled out in the background, telling yourself they're just scared, they're sensitive, they need more time. That compassion was genuine, but it slowly turned into you abandoning yourself piece by piece. Every time you settled for less than you deserved, every time you swallowed your hurt to keep the peace, you were sending their ego one clear message: you can keep doing this and I'll still be right here waiting. But the shift that actually wakes someone like this up doesn't come from yelling, insulting them, or trying to get even. It comes from the moment you quietly stop worshipping the version of them you know they could be and start responding honestly to who they actually are right now, in front of you. They've been relying on their charm, working like clockwork, a sweet message, a cute photo, a soft apology that never really addresses anything, counting on the fact that in the past it was always enough. You'd melt, your frustration would dissolve, you'd slide right back into the cycle. That cycle is where their ego feels safe. They believe they can vanish the moment closeness feels like too much and reappear the second loneliness catches up with them without ever really owning any of it. But the moment their sudden reappearance stops lighting you up the way it used to, something inside them cracks. It's not their soul being wounded, it's their illusion finally breaking apart. Your calm, steady distance feels like an injury to an ego that runs on control and expects predictable reactions out of you. All at once, their distance stops looking mysterious and starts looking suspicious. Their silence no longer reads as strength, it reads as weakness. For the first time, you're not begging them to stay. You're simply letting them show you exactly who they are, letting their choices carry actual consequences. Without raising your voice, you're saying plainly, if you want me, meet me where honesty actually lives. That's how the illusion cracks open. You stop treating their pain as a free pass to hurt you. Stop confusing their trauma with permission to disregard your needs. Stop accepting scraps and vague promises of maybe later. You do it without dramatic confrontations, simply through how you now show up, through slower replies, through no longer softening for them automatically. Every time they expect you to bend and you don't, their ego feels it like a bruise because it exposes a truth they've been avoiding. They were never actually in control of you. They were only ever in control of the version of you who hadn't yet realized her own worth. And if you're honest with yourself, you can feel that shift happening inside you too. You feel the moment your heart, still tender underneath everything, quietly says, I'm done pouring myself into people who don't know how to hold what I'm offering. It hurts, because a piece of you still believes if you love them a little harder, they'll finally become who you always pictured. But another part of you is simply worn out from decoding mixed signals, from teaching someone how to love you while they refuse to learn. That exhaustion isn't your failure, it's your awakening. It forces them to see you as a whole human being with boundaries and needs, and it forces them into a decision they can no longer avoid. Do I actually want to grow and meet this person where they stand, or stay small and lose them completely? Whether they choose to grow or not is entirely their own journey. It was never your job to drag them along it. Your job is simply to stop feeding a story that lets their ego stay warm while your heart goes cold. Stepping back like this isn't hurting their soul, it's protecting your own. And if they ever do rise to meet you in a real mutual way, It will only be because the illusion finally broke enough for them to actually see you clearly, standing tall on your own 2 feet instead of on your knees. When you pull your energy back, their ego senses it long before their conscious mind catches up. Your attention had become an invisible comfort they leaned on without ever acknowledging it. Every good morning text you sent first, every lengthy message where you laid out your feelings, every check-in you initiated during their radio silence, every extra effort you made right after they pulled away. All of it fed the belief inside them that no matter what they did, you weren't going anywhere. They may have called you sensitive, dramatic, or clingy just for wanting basic clarity, but underneath every excuse, their ego was quietly feeding off your love like fuel. They got comfortable knowing you'd always text back, even after they replied late. They got used to you apologizing first, even when they were the one who shut down. They leaned on your consistency without ever bothering to match it themselves. Then something inside you finally snapped. Maybe it was the last unanswered message. Maybe it was catching them active online while ignoring you completely. Maybe it was the final night you spent crying over someone who only ever gave you half of what you actually deserved. A moment arrived where your own soul quietly said enough. You want to reach out. You start typing messages and delete them before hitting send. Your body is so used to chasing that it actually trembles when you don't. But underneath that emotional storm, what you're really doing is calling your own energy back home. You stop giving them free, unlimited access to your time, your empathy, and your emotional space. You stop giving them automatic rights to know exactly how you're feeling at any given moment. Your replies slow down or stop completely. You stop posting for their attention. You stop justifying your worth to someone who has already shown you they can't hold it properly. Your own ego gets scared in this process because it's been conditioned to believe that if you don't chase, you'll lose them for good. But here's the truth you haven't fully seen yet. Their ego is even more terrified because it's been conditioned to believe the opposite, that no matter what they do, you'll never actually leave. When you pull away, avoidants often feel relief first. They mistake the quiet for freedom. They think finally, no pressure. They might even tell themselves this is for the best. But ego-driven relief built on entitlement never sticks around for long. As time passes and you don't come back to reset their comfort, something inside them starts to itch. They check their phone expecting something from you. When nothing shows up, they tell themselves it's nothing. But the silence keeps repeating again and again and again. They start noticing the absence of your presence. The space you use to fill with love and patience turns into a cold, empty spot in their life. They're used to you rushing in to close every emotional gap that opens up. Now that gap just sits there wide open, exposing everything they'd been avoiding all along. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their own behavior back at them. They can no longer lie to themselves about needing you. Your quiet tells them, without a single word, that you can live perfectly fine without their half-hearted version of love. That realization stings, and the panic that follows is quiet, not dramatic, but deep underneath the surface. They start checking your profile more often, asking mutual friends how you've been, replaying old conversations in their head, wondering why the one person who always reached out first suddenly isn't anymore. That panic isn't really about love just yet. It's about losing access to the version of themselves they liked being around you, the one who was always forgiven, always pursued, always emotionally fed without having to give much back. That's why this shift in your energy changes everything. Before, they assumed if I pull away, you'll come closer. Now they're staring down a completely different reality. If I keep pulling away, I might actually lose them for good. The hardest part for you isn't staying quiet. It's trusting that your silence isn't cruelty. Setting boundaries is not punishment or manipulation. It is an act of self-respect. When you stop chasing, accepting less, and carrying the relationship alone, the dynamic changes and reveals whether the other person can truly show up. They might call you cold, distant, or dramatic, different from how you used to be. But the version of you they were used to had no boundaries at all. The one who swallowed her own hurt and said, "It's fine," in a shaking voice. Boundaries expose entitlement for what it is. When you say, "I won't answer at 2 in the morning after being ignored all week," you're not punishing them. You're simply showing access to you now comes with respect attached. And even though their ego might sting from hearing it, that sting is necessary. It tells them the rules have changed. It tells them you won't be treated casually anymore. It tells them if they want to keep you around, they'll have to show up differently than before. They might react badly at first. They might pull away, test your limits, sulk, or try guilt-tripping you back into old habits. But none of that means your boundary was wrong. It just means they've run straight into the edge of the comfort zone they built around your self-sacrifice. When that comfort disappears, they genuinely don't know what to do with themselves, but that confusion was never your burden to carry. Boundaries were never about controlling them. They're about controlling how close someone is allowed to get while they're actively choosing behaviors that hurt you. You are not responsible for their discomfort. You're only responsible for whether you keep shrinking yourself to avoid causing it. Your no to their inconsistency is your yes to your own peace. Your no to their disrespect is your yes to your own dignity. Your no to their emotional laziness is your yes to a future where love actually meets you halfway. And that grounded, settled energy makes you more attractive, not in some manipulative way, but in a steady, self-respecting way that can't be faked. Anyone can chase someone who keeps pulling away. Very few people can genuinely love someone while also loving themselves at the same time. That combination of softness and standards is magnetic, precisely because it can't be manufactured or controlled. It can only be respected. If they ever do rise to meet you, it won't be because you lowered your worth to reach them. It'll be because you held your ground long enough for them to actually grow into it. You become genuinely irresistible the moment you stop reacting to their distance and start responding to your own life instead. For so long, your entire emotional world moved based on their behavior. They'd pull away and you'd move closer. They'd go quiet and you'd raise your voice trying to be heard. They'd act unsure and you'd try even harder to prove your value. Their inconsistency was essentially regulating your emotions and your entire days, and you kept calling that love. But deep down, you always knew it was a loop you were trapped inside. One where your worth depended entirely on their level of interest at any given moment. When you finally step outside that loop, everything shifts. Not because you turn cold, but because you remember you're a whole person with a life that exists well beyond them. Their emotional pattern is subtle. They give you just enough closeness to pull you back in, then pull away the second things start feeling real. And your heart keeps trying to recreate that warm version of them you once knew. You replay the nights they opened up, the moments they softened, the rare times they actually met you emotionally, and you try to earn those moments all over again, as if love was something you win through sheer patience. But the more you chase after those old memories, the more power you're handing to their avoidant patterns, and the more invisible you become to yourself in the process. When you stop playing into it, the whole pattern collapses. Their distance becomes information instead of a challenge to overcome. Their silence becomes clarity instead of a test you need to pass. You stop asking, "How can I get them to choose me?" and start asking, "Why am I choosing someone who won't show up?" That shift right there is where your real strength begins. You reply slower, not to manipulate anyone, but because you're genuinely busy living your own life again. You stop pouring your heart into long messages that land on half-listening ears. You stop checking their online status and start checking in on your own emotional state instead. You start paying attention to your own needs, your own feelings, your own peace. Your energy becomes grounded and steady, and they feel it instantly because their entire pattern depended on your predictable reactions. When they disappeared, you used to chase. When they offered crumbs, you used to stretch them into full meals. When they acted unsure, you used to reassure them constantly. When you stop doing all of that, their ego loses its favorite source of validation. Suddenly, they no longer control the pace of the connection. They no longer decide when closeness happens and when it fades away. And that unsettles them because now they're forced to see you as a complete person with an inner world of your own, not some emotional accessory orbiting around their moods. You become more attractive, not because you're performing strength for anyone, but because you've genuinely stopped chasing approval altogether. You reconnect with yourself. You start doing the things you'd stopped doing. You spend time with people who actually fill you up. You move, create, rest, and laugh without waiting on their message to arrive first. Your life stops feeling like a waiting room and starts feeling like an actual home. And in that home, anyone who wants access has to knock with respect. They can't just drift in and out like they own the place anymore. You become a rare kind of energy, someone who can love deeply without losing herself in the process, someone who can care without collapsing under the weight of it, someone who can stay open-hearted while still walking away from what hurts her. That balance is what makes you magnetic. Even an avoidant feels it, because they're only used to two extremes: people who chase them relentlessly or people who shut them out completely. You're neither. You're steady, warm, and self-respecting all at once. You can care about them without betraying yourself in the process. And whether they ever rise to meet you or stay locked in their old patterns, you've already won something far more valuable than their attention. You've reclaimed your own life. Their attachment to you actually deepens the moment they realize you're not replaceable. At first, they assume someone like you can be found just about anywhere, someone who gives, forgives, waits, and understands endlessly, so they treat you as though you'll always just be there. But every single time they take you for granted, something inside you quietly closes off. Not your heart exactly, but the illusion you'd been holding on to. You start seeing the imbalance clearly, that you've been the steady one while they've been the storm, the anchor while they drift wherever they please. Your energy shifts from "I need you" to "I want something that actually matches me." From "you are my entire world" to "you are one part of my life, not the whole thing." At first, they don't even notice. Their ego is so used to you being the constant that they assume you'll bend back into place the moment they return, that you're still just one message away, one soft apology away. Sometimes they even test it, sending something casual with zero responsibility behind it, expecting you to brighten up instantly and hand over the same warmth you always offered without a second thought. But when your reply comes slower, shorter, or doesn't come at all, something shifts inside their ego. Suddenly, for the first time, they experience actual doubt. Their ego can no longer predict you, can no longer assume you're still sitting in the same emotional spot, holding the door open, ready to carry the weight of their confusion for them. That uncertainty becomes the space where obsession starts to grow. Not the sweet romantic kind, but the unsettling kind that comes from fear of losing something they once took for granted. They start paying more attention to you, quietly, in the background, checking your profile, noticing you seem a little brighter. It hits them painfully that your entire world didn't fall apart when they stepped out of it. That unsettles them, because it means your survival never depended on their presence to begin with. They start remembering things they never fully appreciated, how you held emotional space for them when they were drowning in self-doubt, how you kept believing in their potential even when they settled for the smallest version of their life. Now, those memories carry a painful question: will I ever find that again? Sometimes they try answering it by distracting themselves, talking to someone new, chasing validation elsewhere, but nothing lands the same way. And slowly, they're forced to accept that what they had with you was never ordinary. The way you understood their moods without an explanation, sensed their emotional shifts before they put them into words, that specific mix of sensitivity, loyalty, and strength simply can't be recreated by finding another face to fill the space. That truth cracks their ego open again, because now they see they didn't just lose a relationship, they lost a kind of love that reflected back a better version of themselves. Their mind might still protect their pride with stories like "I'm fine," or "it ended for a reason," but their body reacts differently. Their chest tightens when someone brings up your name. They start wondering if you still care, if you've met someone who sees your worth the way they failed to. For the first time, they're not just wondering whether they want you back, they're questioning whether they were ever worthy of you at all. This insecurity fuels their obsession. They grow curious about your life, but from fear and confusion rather than a grounded place, wanting to know how you kept moving forward without falling apart. They might come back around eventually, reaching out with a little more effort, not because their love suddenly deepened, but because losing their special place in your life shook their ego awake. They're now confronting a truth you already learned the hard way. You were never something they could simply replace, never meant to be a background character in your own life. But the real secret was never about influencing or manipulating them. It's learning how to love someone without disappearing inside them. For so long, you believed keeping the connection alive meant dimming yourself, softening, bending, shrinking down, thinking if you understood their wounds a little more and forgave quickly enough, they'd eventually choose you right. You turned your heart into a home for their pain and a battlefield for your own, and somewhere in the middle of loving them so hard, you drifted away from yourself. Loving someone without abandoning yourself doesn't mean you stop caring altogether. It doesn't mean turning cold or distant. It means learning to hold two truths at once. You can care about their wounds and still refuse to let those same wounds cut into you over and over again. You can understand the scared, wounded part of them and still insist on being treated with basic respect. You can understand their trauma and still say clearly, "This particular behavior hurts me." There's a version of you that believed love gets proven by how much pain you're able to tolerate, by how many nights you cry yourself to sleep and still stay anyway, by how many times you forgive while absolutely nothing changes on their end. That version of you grew out of the belief that if you loved harder than anyone ever had before, your love alone would eventually fix everything. But now you're learning something different. That was never love. That was self-abandonment wearing the disguise of devotion. Loving someone without losing yourself means you stop treating your own needs like optional details. You stop shrinking in conversations to avoid upsetting them. Stop pretending you're fine with irregular communication when your chest tightens every time they disappear. You start speaking the truth calmly without begging. I need communication, I need respect, I need effort, and you let their reaction teach you what you need to know. If they dismiss you or disappear again, you stop chasing them into their own avoidance without becoming bitter or building some story that they're a terrible person. You simply acknowledge they are where they are, and you are where you are, and where you are now requires more than what they're offering. When you love someone and still refuse to betray yourself, you stop trying to be their healer or emotional guide. You stop repeating the same truths over and over, hoping this will finally be the time it reaches them. Instead, you start listening to your own body, the exhaustion in your bones, the anxiety in your breath, the sadness when their name appears on your phone. You start talking to yourself the way you always wish someone else would, reminding yourself your needs are valid and wanting secure. Safe love isn't asking too much. You put your energy into friendships, work, creativity, and your own healing, not as distraction, but as a declaration that your life belongs to you. If they want to walk that path alongside you, they're welcome to. But you won't abandon yourself again just to follow them back into their fear. When you stay rooted in your own truth, when you protect your emotional reality instead of constantly sacrificing it, you create a completely different kind of space, one where they finally have to face the impact of their own choices, because your endless forgiveness isn't shielding them from that anymore. They either rise to meet that space or they don't. Either way, you stop losing yourself in the process. You stop basing your entire worth on their ability to love you the right way. You learn to give from a place of overflow instead of emptiness and exhaustion. You learn to say, I love you, but I love myself too. And if I ever have to choose between abandoning myself and losing you, I will grieve losing you, but I will not leave myself behind in the process.